Dave Evans, it's been a while. Good to have you here at Noise11.com.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I appreciate it.
I didn't think we'd be talking about Rabbit ever again, but we're talking about Rabbit again.
Yes, I know. It's amazing, really. The boys are still, rocking, and it's we're a rock and roll band. We're not metal or anything like that. We're pure rock and roll. And Mark Tinson got in touch with me, one of the guitarists of the band, and Mark Tinson also produced a couple of my own personal albums as well. We've kept in touch over the years and worked together over the years. And he just said, "Look, how about doing a Rabbit album?" And I thought, yeah, that'd be fantastic. Fantastic to do. And so that's what we've done. We've done it. So yeah.
Yeah. So Defenders of Rock. This is the third Rabbit album and marking the 50th anniversary of the band.
That's right. Yeah, the third album, and it is the 50th anniversary this year. That's true. Yeah.
There were two previous albums. So we had the Rabbit album and the Too Much Rock and Roll album. And, that was an interesting time in music in Australia. I loved both of those records. I seemed to see you and hear you everywhere at the time. But it seemed to be a band that just fell through the cracks. Were we just too basically busy with so much creativity going on in Australia at that time?
We were flat out working, same as all the other top bands. Just always touring. And the problem was a couple of the states in Australia didn't play our records. Even though we were on Countdown and Sounds Unlimited and all the national television programs, and some of the states were playing our records, of course, and we were touring every state to packed crowds. There was a couple of the states in Australia didn't play our records for some reason. And so that was a bit of a bummer. But we played the States and pulled record crowds in the States. But it was a time when disco happened, like the 77 and around that time. And a lot of bands broke up at that time because a lot of the venues put in DJs and they didn't put in bands anymore. So a lot of bands like ourselves, TMG, Sherbet, at that time, we split up at that time because we still had to travel Australia with the same expenses. We still had roadies and crew and all that kind of stuff, accommodation, but we only had like half the gigs that we used to have because of disco and the Bee Gees and all that. They were all disco. And so a lot of bands broke up at that time. Our fans still loved us, of course, and the shows that we did do were packed. But a lot of the top bands split up. And it gave the support bands at the time a chance to sign with record labels. They didn't have as much overheads as we did. We had lots of crew, big shows we were doing. So the smaller bands like Cold Chisel and the Angels, who were like our support bands, they didn't have a lot of overheads. They signed, and they became the next wave of bands that made it after us. Sherbet came back and did a few more shows. TMG later on came back, of course, and did shows as well. But after we split with Rabbit, we didn't reform. I went on with other bands. I was with Dave Evans and Thunder Down Under in Melbourne. And in the 90s, I really got into acting, did a couple of movies, and did a live stage show in the 90s. And then around about 2000, 2001, the music scene had we're going to say it recovered somewhat, after the 90s, and I got back into it. But I went overseas. I went to Europe, and I've been mostly overseas ever since, mostly in Europe and the USA, and these days mostly Latin America. That's where it rocks. It really, really, really rocks in Latin America. Most bands don't know that. They don't go there. I don't care. I've got it virtually to myself and a few of the other top bands that know about it as well. So I live in Mexico these days. I lived in Buenos Aires for a few years in Argentina, and I was just constantly touring all the time, Latin America, and crowds packed. Incredible. So I've been busy, and I've been recording and releasing album after album, recording in Europe, in England, recording in Norway, Denmark, Mexico. So I've been, and Australia, of course, with Defenders of Rock. I came back to Australia last Christmas, and low profile, and got together with the Rabbit Boys, and we knocked over Defenders of Rock, and I just love the album. And what's fantastic too is that the reviewers everywhere and the fans love the album as well, which is really wonderful.
After Rabbit broke up, Mark Tinson went on to form Heroes, which was an Albert's band. Of course, you were in an Albert's band when you came into Rabbit. And on this record, you've got the track Let's Get Loud featuring Scott Johnson of Rose Tattoo. And, of course, Rose Tattoo started off as an Albert's band too. It's very interconnected still 50 years later.
Well, it is. And before AC/DC, I was singing with a band called Velvet Underground in Sydney. And we used to back Ted Murray a lot, and Ted wanted to put a band together because he was a solo artist in those days, and the band used to back him when he came on stage. I'd sit backstage and the band would back Ted. And then Ted decided he wanted to form a band, the Ted Murray Gang, and he asked two of the boys in Velvet Underground, Herm Kovacs and Les Hall, if they'd join him and form TMG. No hard feelings. Ted was a friend of mine. We used to, and the boys were friends too. But Ted was a big star, so they said, "Yeah, we're going to join Ted." So TMG are also part of the whole Rabbit and AC/DC thing, because after I split with AC/DC, after the big punch up with the manager, I met Ted Murray in Checkers nightclub, and he said, "Oh, Dave, are you looking for a band?" And I said, if it's any good. And he said, there's band Rabbit in Newcastle. They had a singer. And I'd seen them in Checkers. They were a very good band. They hadn't recorded or anything like that, but they were very good. He said, look, they're looking for a band. And I said, okay, I'm interested. And the boys came down to Sydney from Newcastle. And we had a chat. And they were excited. And I was pretty excited too, because they were very good. And so I went up to Newcastle and joined the boys up there. And then when we signed with CBS Records, we all moved to Sydney. So we're all connected together, TMG, AC/DC, Rabbit. We all sort of know each other. And Scott Johnson on drums, that was a surprise, because they put down the music before I went back to Australia last Christmas to put the vocals down. And, there's quite a few drummers. I think there's three drummers actually on the album, and Scott Johnson is one of the drummers on Let's Get Loud. So that's pretty cool.
Jim Porteous as well. Now, he goes way back with Rabbit.
Yep. Yeah, Jim's great. He's still rocking. And because the band, when I joined the band, it was called A Rabbit. That was the band that was around in Newcastle, A Rabbit. And it was a weird name. I remember asking Mark Tinson, why A Rabbit? He said, because all the other bands are called like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones. He said, I wanted to be different. I said, okay. But anyway, when we signed with CBS Records, they said, we don't like A Rabbit. You're going to be called Rabbit. And so Rabbit was born in the CBS offices. We signed the contract in there, and that's where Rabbit began. The band Rabbit began. And so, yeah, it's an amazing history, of course. It's fantastic.
On the track Guitar Man, you sing, I'll be rockin' to my dying days. And I guess, 50 years down the track, both you and I have never had a real job, have we?
You don't want one, do you?
Too late to start for me.
Well, a bit late for me too. That's a cool song, that Guitar Man. I recorded that in Denmark, and with a great guitarist and songwriter, Nicholas Robinson. He may not sound Danish, but his dad was English and his mom was Danish, and he was born in Denmark. And he's an incredible guitarist, one of the most incredible guitarists I've ever worked with. Nick, amazing. And we write songs together, and we've got another new one coming up as well. We've already recorded the music for that. He's put the music down, and I'll be putting the lyrics down hopefully when I get back to Australia with Mark Tinson. But they're produced by Fleming Rasmussen, and he's Metallica's producer, as you know. So it was cool and I've done a couple of other songs with Fleming. It was cool to work with him as well in Denmark. So I've been busy, Paul. I'm still busy.
Only the good die young. Let's talk about AC/DC.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, let's get on to AC/DC. Can I Sit Next to You, Girl, and Rockin' in the Parlour, the single that you did the lead vocals on. Were they the only songs you actually recorded with the band?
No, we were doing our album at the time, and I'd already recorded Little Lover and Rock and Roll Singer and Soul Stripper. They were already recorded, so we had 5 songs down for the album. We were about to do Baby Please Don't Go because that was our showstopper. That's where I used to get Angus Young on my shoulders, and we do the question and answer with the vocals and guitar. We do that, and I'd walk around the stage with Angus on my shoulders. And Bon Scott was a fan of the band and a friend of. He became friends with Angus and Malcolm, and he used to hang around with us. And of course, he saw me with Angus on my shoulders, and he copied that, of course, after he joined the band, and Brian Johnson's copied it since. So yeah, it was an amazing time, an incredible time. I was very fortunate, of course, to be able to do the very first songs with AC/DC, because once Bon Scott joined, they re-recorded those songs that I mentioned, and he recorded Baby Please Don't Go exactly the same way as I used to sing the song. And he also changed the lyrics of a couple of songs that I'd written with the band. Fell in Love was a song I wrote with Malcolm, and he changed the lyrics to Love Song for Jean or something like that. And Show Business was a song that he wrote for Sunset Strip, which I did with the band. He redid the lyrics. They were supposed to be on the album too. So the album was just about ready to go when Bon Scott joined, and he re-recorded songs and rewrote songs that I'd already written with the band.
So that's a great.
But I was with Rabbit.
Yeah, that's a great hidden treasure then, because all of those recorded works must still exist.
Well, I don't know. They may have deleted them. I have no idea. But water under the bridge. I know the fans would love to hear them, of course, the original versions, because I've heard the original version of Can I Sit Next to You, Girl? And Bon Scott re-recorded that one on a second album or something like that. But it's nothing like the original. It doesn't sound anything like it. And the original, we had a review, which is an incredible review of our version of Can I Sit Next to You, Girl? In fact, the reviewer doubted that we actually played on the record because we were so young. And he was sort of intimating that we used session players. That's how good the record was. But no, we all played on the record, and I sang on the damn thing too. So that's how good the original version. And they still love it today. I do that song every show I do. I do Can I Sit Next to You, Girl? And the crowd goes absolutely crazy. They love it. Yeah.
And probably not even realizing that is the original version. Bond did the cover.
I know, but most of the people know this is the original version. People are not, the fans around the world. Australia's a little bit in the dark with all this stuff, believe me. I tour the world constantly all around, and I go to probably more countries than anybody else on the planet, actually. And the fans are pretty smart, and they know who I am, and they know the original version of Can I Sit Next to You, Girl, for sure.
When I go back and have a look at the old set lists, when you were performing with AC/DC, there were 3 songs that stood out to me. Stay for a While, The Old Bay Road, and Midnight Rock. Are they unrecorded AC/DC songs? Well, yeah, that's
unfortunate because the Stay for a While was a pretty cool song. I used to enjoy doing that. Malcolm Young wrote it. And The Old Bay Road was a really good song too. That was one of Malcolm's songs. And we did them every time we performed. We did those songs, and the crowd loved them. Midnight Rockin' was a song I wrote with the band. I guess after I split with the band, it never went any further with Bon Scott. But there's also a double live album called In the Beginning, and I'm on all those songs. And it came about by accident, really. And if you're lucky enough, you can get it on eBay if somebody wants to sell it, but it's very, very expensive because it's the very first ever live recording of AC/DC. And how it happened was we replaced our original drummer and bass player with two new guys, Neil Smith and Noel Taylor. Neil's no longer with us. And we got a little pub in King's Cross. And we asked the guy, listen, can we have a couple of weeks' work here so we can run the new bass player and drummer in with the songs. We were doing a lot of cover songs in those days, a lot of cover songs, a lot of rock and roll, 12-bar rock and roll, and Rolling Stones and other things as well, some Beatles too. And we just want to run the drummer and the bass player. The guy sort of went, okay, and he said, we can do it. So we were playing there, packed houses, of course, people. King's Cross is only a small pub. Anyway, unbeknownst to us, I think it was the bass player, it might have been the drummer, the new bass player or drummer, I can't remember. But he just put just a tape, one of those little tape, reel-to-reel little tapes, on a table near the front of the stage. There's no stage, it was just the floor. And he recorded the whole night because he wanted to take it home to practice all the songs. We didn't know this. Anyway, this is years later, maybe in the 90s or something like that. I met him, and he said, "Oh, I've got a tape of us live." I said, "Where?" He said, "At that pub in King's Cross." I said, "How did you get it?" He said, "I just taped the night so I could learn the songs at home." I said, "Wow." And he said, "I've got a couple of spares. Do you want one?" I thought, yeah, I'll have a listen to it. Anyway, it was terrible because he put it right in front of Malcolm's amp, virtually. So that the mix was like all Malcolm's guitar. It was like, I thought that's not even listenable. So I said, you can have it back. But anyway, what happened was somebody got hold of it and spoke to a company, I think in the United States, and they did a mix, best mix they could possibly do of the session, of the night, the gig, the whole night. I think we did about 3 sets. And all the songs we did, all the cover songs, they're all on it. And released it as a double live album, beautifully presented. They sent me one, actually. I got one in Australia. It's beautifully presented. And that's... but it's still terrible. The mix is still, but it's a snapshot. It's part of history, and it's there forever. So I'm there recorded singing with AC/DC all these songs. Elvis Presley songs and Little Richard and Beatles and Rolling Stones, and it's an AC/DC recording. So that's an incredible. A double vinyl album for fans who have it. It was a limited edition. They sold them all, of course, out of the United States. And that's an AC/DC recording, the very first ever live AC/DC recording. And that's with Dave. So,
wow, there'll be a few people going searching for that now that we know it's out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What are the plans for Rabbit Live? Will you be doing shows together?
Don't know about that. I haven't done shows in Australia for many, many years. We haven't really spoken about it, to tell you the truth. I've got some more recordings to do with Mark Tinson. They're not Rabbit songs. These are Dave Evans songs that we're going to be doing. And I will see Mark before Christmas. I'm going to spend Christmas in Australia again this year. So I'll be seeing Mark Tinson and hopefully the other boys too, Jimmy, if Jimmy's there, David Hines, and to see what they come up with, because I'm doing pretty well overseas at the moment. And they'd have to entice me somehow to do that if they have any thoughts of it themselves. So the only problem I see is we haven't done any shows in Australia for 50 years. And I don't even know if we'd draw a crowd at this stage. I don't know. I've been away for a long time. So.
Yeah. Well, if you're all together in a pub, just take your guitars and some drumsticks and just jump up in a corner.
Somewhere in Newcastle somewhere,
yeah. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Dave, it's always a pleasure to catch up with you, and so much history, so much to talk about. Thanks for joining us here at Noise11.
Yeah, Paul, it's been a pleasure and good to speak with you again. And, as we always say, keep rocking.
Good stuff.